Okay, we're back. It's COMP397, and it's week 11, lesson 11, part 1, and today we have a request, before I get into the phaser demo, to do buttons, right? So we're going to use our male pilot demo to get this done. So for us to do that, I'm going to initialize button movement. I'm going to reveal this, or open this in terminal. And we're going to do, remember that our, this program right here that we made now, this male pilot version, what we're actually doing is we've created a little node application, if I'm not wrong, to make it go, right? So we got an index.ts file that runs the node application because we got a package.json file. We also have a proc file that we run now. We're running this file up on Heroku, yeah? So if I go nodemon, then, because node monitor is the thing that actually monitors how our application is going, I should be able to go into localhost 3000 and run my application, right? Because again, our application is running with Node in on the back end now. So again, this is what we want to change. We want to change it from this into some kind of movement, right? So like mouse movement, or sorry, keyboard movement. So keyboard input is what we're looking for. I have examples of this online, so let's take a look at the one we have, because no point recreating the wheel. So there's some tricks to this. So if I go to, if I think it's going to be me, I don't think I put it under the regular one. And if I go to Starbase 12, that's the one I usually look at because that's the most complete one. But it doesn't mean we have to use only that one. Here it is, version 4. Alright, so in this other application that I built, I have a couple scripts. And the first one we need is we have to look at the config script. I have one called controls, which is a totally different module. So I'm going to copy this one because I want to use, instead of forward, reverse, turn left, turn right, phaser, and photon, these are kind of player controls to make sure that I'm going forward or back. The only one I need to do is go left and right. So I'll change this kind of module. I create this module called controls where we move left and right. Right? So instead of turning left and right, it'll just be left and right. Okay, and then this will keep track, because of what this is doing, this will keep track of you know, when it turns off and on, when I go left and right, as an example, right? So that's the first piece I need to turn it on. So I'm going to go into my application, and then we may decide to trounce this little piece because we don't need it necessarily. Don't know why that's up. And so I'm going to put this under my scripts, under my config. I have a config file, but I'm going to kind of add a new file in there called controls.ts. Okay, cool. And we're going to call this module, right? And if you notice what we had there before, if I go back to thing, it's called controls, but we're putting it in config, which is kind of weird, right? Normally I kind of compartmentalize things by config. It's a config module. But I've called this one controls, and you can do that. I don't highly recommend it. Like, this is maybe not the best way we could have done it. So we might rename this later on. But for now, we're going to call this module controls. Inside there, like it shows, we need a couple of controls. I'm just going to take these two just to copy these two things. And this, exactly what it does, keeps track of the state of player controls. Are they on or off? What do we got? That kind of stuff. So instead of forward and reverse, right, we're going to keep you know, track of left and right, right? You don't have to do it this way, but I found that keeping track of where you're going, if it's true or false, it's important for us to do that. So controls is a module. What do we got to do when we install a module? We've got to put it inside of our index.html. So we have to go to index.html. And because it's a high-level module, like up here, I probably want to hit things under our script instead of up here where it says config. I'll put it right in there, and we'll just rename this thing to controls. There we go, config controls. And I'm going to do the same thing with in my core module, which is in here. I have my reference. Remember I created that reference module before? So under config, I'm going to put another reference to controls, because there's no point us having too many modules. There we go, controls.ts. And in our controls.ts file, we're going to just export these two. So if I go, you know, I want to kind of build that out. So now I have controls.js and controls.ts with this one control in. So that's the first requirement that I see up online. Let's go back to scripts. Under config, I also have keys. right? So keys and controls. And a layer. I don't care about layer, but I do care about keys. And this module keys, I'm going to kind of keep verbatim. This kind of keeps track of my key codes, right? So left, right. These are left and right arrows, by the way, left and right. And up, down, up and down arrow, space bar, ASDW. These are okay to copy them off. So I'm going to kind of copy these keys. And the module is going to be called keys, and it's also going to be in config. All right, so let's just go put this back. I'm going to go into my folder here under config, make a new file called keys.ts, and paste. So that's this module. And I got to do the same thing. So I'm going to go back into index.js, right? As an index.html, and underneath my config controls, I'm going to be config. I'm going to copy this and paste, config keys, right? There it is, my keys.js. And then in my reference.ts, I'm going to do the same thing, get that reference in there so I can add that reference path so I can access my controls. And that'll be in there called keys. There we go. So I've got my keys and I've got my this stuff, and all this is doing again. It's just I can go keys.left, keys.right, keys.space, and A and stuff. So I can use this to check which is my which key code I'm using, right? So remember, each key that I'm using has got a key code, right? And by the way, these key codes are the same regardless of what program you're using, pretty much. All right, so I've done that one. That's part of our class and everything else. I've added those two things. Let's go back. So we've got that one. Any other config? Let's go to layer and see what that is, just to see. So layer, I actually created at the time. I created different layers to deal with some problems. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So I can make sure that the layer, when I fire a bullet, it goes into the right layer. That's all I was doing, right? So it doesn't look like the bullet or the photon or whatever is on the wrong layer. It's like below or above other layers, and that's why I created these things. So I don't need that in this game, although I could have something like that for my plane and island and ocean and stuff like that. So let's go back to scripts. So I've got that. Filters is a bunch of filters that come with Create.js. I'm not going to use those. Interfaces, I created an iObject interface. An iObject interface means that it just forces my object to have a width and a height and an update and destroy method, all my objects, right? So it kind of creates a contract. That's what interfaces do with the class that implements them. And there's other reasons for doing this, but I'm not going to use. I don't need that interface, right? My libs folder is all my libraries. This is the one in the state that they were at the time. By the way, if you notice that easel was at 0.7.1. Now they're way higher. jQuery was at 2.1.1. We're a few few levels higher than that. And then again, it's about a year ago that this was done, right? Okay, so let me go into managers. We've got our asset manager and our game manager and all this game tile manager and so on, our Klingons to manage our enemies and our particle explosions and all this kind of stuff. I don't need any of this, right? In our objects, I have my crosshairs, my enemy, and all this kind of stuff. I do have a player object, and I'm pretty sure it's called player. And I think I'd like to look in there and see if there's anything that I talk about for doing key down events. So I kind of look in here to see what they are. So the first thing I want to take a look at is my update function, which is check bounds and my target left and right and all that stuff. My destroy function, which all my stuff have. And then in my init function, I have my turn rate, player turn, my target, my photon fired, my target angle, all this kind of stuff. Oh, and there, look, here we have an assigned controls. So I need to have these ones. So I'm going to have to get these assigned controls and put this assigned controls into my player. So I have to modify my player object. So I'm going to go into our own little objects here. So I'm going to go into my objects, and we'll go into my plane, which is the player for us. Our player object is a lot easier than my player object in this one. So I'm just going to kind of put this in, which is a private assign controls method. And notice that it says this.onControlDown, right? I don't have this yet, but we will. This is just our methods we've made for our private methods, right? So, and I use the windows.onKey, and what it does, it assigns my this.onControlDown methods to that. I don't have that yet. Let's get them. So here's onControlDown. Copy those almost verbatim, and onControlUp. And those two things are going to basically the ones we're going to modify. So we're just going to put them in here and place them in. Notice how I have controls dot turn left, and I don't have any of those. And notice I have a bunch of keys I don't need, like up and down and space right now. I don't need any of that stuff. I fire with my mouse button. I could fire with my space button. I could do that for now, but I'll leave. I don't have a firing mechanism for my plan. I just have a moving mechanism right now, right? So we're going to get rid of the down and the up, and we're going to leave the, so get rid of all this, because I don't have that. And I don't have a turn left, but actually I have a controls.left, if you remember, right? So left, and I have a controls.right, because I just put that in there, right. And the same thing goes with down here with my turn left and turn right, up and down. So I'm going to get rid of all these. So keys W and A and D are the keys that we're going to use. I'm also using left and right. Left and right are left and right arrows, right? So left and right. So there's two states. One is going to be my event. They're both keyboard events, if you notice, right? One is on control downs when I press the button down, and one is when I let the button up. That's what they're supposed to be for. So this is on control down, this is on control up. Okay, cool. So I've got these bindings, but I haven't used them yet. All right, these are just the ones that I've used in my player. Let's go back. So I've got that. Okay, here's the control action. So this is responds if my controls left is true or right or whatever. So I'm just going to take this same thing, right? And this is the stuff that makes me perform my actions, right? So this is almost like a switch statement that I'm using. And I've compartmentalized it this way for a reason, right? Again, I'm going to say if controls left is equal to true, right? If control left is equal to true, then we're going to perform the move left. We're going to change this to our move left method, right? And if our controls is equal to right is true, well, then we're going to do our move right method. We don't have those methods yet, but we will. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to cancel all of these because we don't need forward, reverse, or the other one. Okay, so just those two. Move left, move right. Okay, let's go and continue to get more stuff. So I've got my check photon and whatever, and notice that I don't have a turn left and turn right in here because, if I remember correctly, it was part of our main game object at the time. So I got to go back to objects, and I'm going to look at game object .ts, and in my game object is packed full of stuff: width, height, turn rate, speed, direction, blah blah blah, right? Location, and so on. It also has a turn left and turn right function, and I'm going to kind of nab these ones right now and rework them so they work for us. So copy those two, go back down here, and again, this would be a couple more functions that we're going to put in here in place for this, right? So turn left would be move left, and we don't need the direction here, and this one would be move right, right? We don't need that. Okay, so remember, we have to also think about how we're going to make our stuff go. So all this stuff that we got in here, pretty much I didn't have to do that. All this stuff here is pretty much going to be gone because we don't care about any of this stuff. So to test this out, first of all, to see if we're moving right or moving left, we're going to put a console.log in here, right? So console.log, and we're going to say something like moving left, right? And we're going to also do a console.log, which is moving right. So some basic tests to test out our functionality to make sure that it's working, right? So now I have to call my key binding events. Notice that the two that I'm using are on control down, which is this one, and on control up. Now these are window.onKeyUp and onKeyDown. That means, if you want to know for sure how this works, is that anytime I press the keys down on my keyboard for any Windows events, that I'm going to get I'm assigning these window on key down and window on key up to the browser window, right? That's what's happening. So anytime I press those buttons, I'm doing that. But I have to call the assign controls method somewhere. If I don't call the assign controls method, it won't work. I'm not going to disable my mouse for a couple reasons. If I disable my mouse now, if the cloud comes, it'll kill me, and if I want to test, my functionality, sometimes it'll fail. I'm still not going to change this position, right? So I'm not doing any of that yet, not changing anything. All I'm doing is adding these controls to see if it crashes and get any other errors, because I'm making a lot of changes here, right? All right, so let's go back up to here. Check bounds I don't need because I should already have that methodology in place. If I don't, I can always add that in. For now, let's leave this up, so I may have to refer to it again. Let's go back to my game, and one thing I should also check is when do I call my methods. So I gotta go back here. So in my constructor, notice I do a couple things: width, location, radius, integrity, all this kind of stuff. I kind of add this on, but I don't do it. I don't ever call the check keys method or whatever in here. So if I go back to objects, and if I go to my player object, which is somewhere down here, here it is. Then on here in my constructor, there must be somewhere, and there it is. The assign controls method is being called in my constructor, and it's done pretty much at the bottom, right? So I go back to my code. So this dot assign controls, right? So if I go to my constructor, in my constructor I have my x and y position, my engine sound. I might as well call this dot assign controls. So this dot underscore assign controls, right? And here we go. So that's what's gonna do the thing for us. Okay. So, and we'll say assign keyboard controls. Okay, cool. So I've got that. I haven't added any additional objects or methods or modules. So I think I'm good to go. I just need to transpile. So I'm going to say just transpile that. Make sure that's good. No errors. Let us go back to our game and see just if it works as normal, right? So refresh, start. Everything works as normal, right? I need to check that first, because if we have some other error propping up, that'll be a problem, right? So let's refresh. Okay, and what I want to do is I want to pull up my inspect element console. So I want to see any kind of console errors here or whatever. So remember what I kind of said. I want to say when I probably don't need this anymore, but when I press my keyboard controls, so A and D, I should get responses. So A and D. Yay. And I'm not getting anything, right? Like Mr. Man was saying here, right? So how come this isn't working, right? Yay. How come I'm not getting Windows commands working on my thing? Because, well, there might be two reasons. One, I may not have control of my window object, right? The other thing is, like, let's check to see if I refresh my game. How about them apples, to make sure that things are good, right? Because I want to build my game, right? So again, I'm pressing my keyboard controls and I'm not getting anything. Also my arrow controls. I'm moving my thing around, but that's okay because I should be getting something here. I'm getting nothing. So that's a good sign we're not getting any responses, right? Two things. So that's the first thing. Let's go back to this. So what I want to do is when I assign controls, this happens in my constructor, right? So here's when I instantiate my object, my plane object, I'm actually assigning my controls to my plane. Right? And it's calling, just to see what it does, it's calling that binding event, right? So this binding event right here, window.onKeyDown, right? So I'm not getting any responses from this, because if I was, and if I kind of hold this down, it says event.keyboard event, right? That's what's happening, event.keyboard event, which is the window, capital W, .onKeyDown type event, right? Now, knowing that it's a window event and I'm using Create.js, I have access to all the JavaScript libraries as well, so I can do some troubleshooting. If I go window, like this, just to see what the window is, and if I go dot onKeyDown, doesn't work, right? So that's important to note. Window lowercase dot onKeyDown, right? That works. I can access onKeyDown, Onkeyup, Onkeypress. All that stuff is working, right? So I know that this is a good thing. Right, so window events. But remember that my plane is not only inside of its own module, but also that my plane is also inside of its own, it's encapsulated inside of a game class, right? A game module. So that might be, creating a barrier to this event, which should be a global event, right? This window.onKeyUp and onKeyDown, right? I should be able to choose whether when I'm pressing this button, I should be getting onKeyDown and onkeyup events. So let's do one thing. Let us create this onKeyDown and onkeyup event outside of the like you did, outside of the player class, and onto the main game class, right? The game class itself, I'm saying, right? And then what we want to pass is if that's true, the key up and key down events, we should be able to get some kind of controls based on what we choose. So again, on key down and on key up binds this on control down and on control up events, right? That's what it does. So let's do a test, and let's kind of copy some of this stuff. I'm just going to copy on control up and on control down, and I'll make a simpler test than this, because obviously what's happening is and you guys the same thing, right?
It doesn't work anywhere.
So you won't even get any response at all, 0, right? Yeah. So, and the reason for that is because we have passed these events into our game. We have to pass the window object, right, from our game. So like almost like this window is equal to window. Pass that into our game object, and then take it into our game object as a window, and then we can do it. So let's try this out. So, because what we're saying is window as in the global window, but we're never going to access the global window here because of the way this is done, right? So what if, and this is the way I'm thinking, we were to take this in as a constructor on either on the plane object or the game object. So first of all, let's bring it into the game object so I get some key down events on the game object itself, right? So we're just going to take all this stuff here, right? And we're going to do a little test, and we're going to erase it eventually, right? So get all this stuff here, copy it. And I'm going to go into my state, my game state, which is where everything gets encapsulated, right? And that's what's good for us for what we're doing, but we want to try and get this stuff down and over here. So what I want to do is before there's any scoreboard or ocean or anything else, I want to test this stuff out, right? And we can also create, what I also like to do when I do experiments is, we might also think about creating a separate game state altogether, right? Which might be something to do. So when we click start, we're going to bastardize our game. So this is not going to be a 2-minute thing, Stephen, what we're going to do here. What we're going to do is we're going to bastardize our game state. So when we go into our controls, right, we're going to get into it. So I think might be the best thing to do is to copy our game state, and create our own test state, if you will, right, that we're going to start going into. Because it will avoid some rewriting. Let's put it that way. So in my states, I'm going to create a new file. We're going to call this test, right? Test.ts. And my test.ts, I'm going to go into something like a game over, because I don't have a lot of stuff in my game over, just this stuff. And pretty much I'm going to copy all this stuff here that's in my game over state, but it's not going to have a lot of this other thing. I need a start method. I need a constructor method. I need all this stuff, but I'm not going to copy and paste it all. I'd rather erase than copy. So I'm going to copy everything. Copy, go back to my test state and paste. And instead of it being called over, we're going to call it test with a T, right? Which is going to be extending our objects.scene. I need an ocean, just to rub the ocean, give the ocean a chance. And there's no game label or score label or restart button, none of that. I don't need any of those buttons right now or labels. So we get rid of all that stuff. So all this is going to be gone. Just an ocean. So we have a background. So it's not so boring, right? So that's it. So ocean, we're going to add child, stage add child, and we don't need this button callback because we're not going to have any events happen right now. We'll leave the private methods in there. Okay, cool. And let's add that other piece. So here's my state. It's going to be called the test state. Okay, so if I go back to plain, game.ts. Let me just save all for a second. I'm going to go back to plain, and I want to grab these files. So this stuff right here. So copy, and I'm going to go into my test state to check it out, because I mean this is the troubleshooting we have to do, right? And I'm going to pile these ones under private methods, because that would work fine. So paste. So those are going to be okay, right? I still have access to my key down and my key codes and all that kind of stuff that I have, because I inherit that stuff. But this is at the state level. This is not at the object level, right? That I'm getting, right? So this is my assign controls, and I can assign controls to the state, no problem. And I have on key down, on key up, and then if you notice that controls are true and whatever. And you know what? I'm thinking that I know why it works, why it doesn't work. Because when I do this, I say that my controls are left and right, right? And left equals false and right equals false. But how do I check that? Go back to my plane for a second. Sorry, it just tinkled in my head. It just tinkled in my head. Control action. And what do I call control action? Sorry, guys. I'm just thinking about it right now. My control action should be called in my update method. Sorry, I missed something. So I should really, in my update method, and I bet you if I go up online for a second to this, and if I look at my update method, I should say this: if game controls, this is what I missed, right? If game controls, and if game controls, why would I say game controls? Where did I put that in play? Because I must assign game controls. I want to check action. Oh, I can disable and enable game controls. Right, so I want to control action in my update. That's what I missed. So let's go back before I make my other function. Sorry, it just tinkled in my head. Right, this is what happens when I refactor. Going back to my plane.ts, in my mouse.function, before my mouse function fires, I want to say something like this.control action. Right, I want to make sure that I check my control actions and make sure that if what I'm checking. So now I'll transpile. Let's just fix up our test folder to make sure there's nothing else going on down here, right? And just to make sure there's nothing messing up. So I haven't even attached my test state yet anyway, so it doesn't matter. Let's go back to this one and test it, because I think this is the first step I'd like to take, and refresh. Cool, start. And now, if I press my buttons, moving right, moving left, I get responses. That's good. That's what I wanted to see. You seeing this? Okay, but I got moving left, moving right. There is no true false. I'm moving left, moving right already. It's already happening, right? If I didn't have moving left, moving right, it wouldn't happen. I'm going to give it to you right. I just did the code right now, man. Here. So let's go back. That's what I was afraid of, because I missed something. Okay, so that means I don't need my test state. Get rid of that, just to be nice with Steven, right? Test state's gone. I don't need that anymore. I've already fixed it out. Just by doing my experiment, I figured it out, right? That's how it is. Okay, now, in my plane state, my plane method, I haven't fixed this yet. So what do I want to do? Console left and console right doesn't really test anything. I need to test this to see if it works, right? So how do I test it out to know that I'm moving left and moving right, truly moving left and moving right? How do I do that, right? Well, I've got to change my X position, right? Because my X position is being handled by my mouse right now, and I want to change my X position a certain amount. How far do I want to move? Probably like not more than 5 to the right or 5 to the left, right? So let's get rid of this stuff. I don't need these things. I'm going to say something like this. This.x, right, is plus equal to 5, right? So I'm going to actually move that to the right. To the left is minus equal to 5. To the right is plus equal to 5. So I'm going to say this.y, x, sorry, is minus equal to 5. Or plus equal to 5 will be okay. I did one thing and the other one. There you go. So I've got plus equal to 5 and minus equal to 5 if I move left or right. Okay, so now let's transpile. And let me just, before I do that, I'm also going to format my code to make Steven happy, because that would be good, right? Because formatting code is always a good thing. Okay, now let's go back to the game and refresh. Now I don't have any of these things in here, but if I start, and now I'm using just my mouse and keyboard, let's see if this is working, right? Because I've got to be able to affect my game, move it left and right. So it moved left and right. It moved left and right, but I don't have the ability to change my position. Why? Because I'm using my mouse already. My mouse is keeping track of my X and Y coordinates. I have to disable that because it's going to stay where my mouse is. Right? That's what's happening. My mouse itself is keeping my plane in the exact same position, no matter what I put my X and Y coordinates, right? I got to get rid of that. So I got to go back to here, and that's the next piece. So where it says this.x stage is stage mouse X, I'm going to get rid of this. I'm just going to kind of comment it out and say, there's another comment that says for moving with mouse, right? And then I'll say this is for moving with keyboard, because I'll have either one. Moving with keyboard. Right, so I got to get rid of my mouse commands, right? So that, do this, and then inside of here, after I've done it, refresh, go back here, and now I can see that my mouse, my keyboard is being moved by my controls, as opposed to my mouse. I'm not using my mouse at all now. It's harder. It's way harder, right? Because I can't respond the same way. I'm only moving 5 pixels to the left and to the right, but I can if I have to be a little bit more conservative with my goals. Yeah, I'm gonna die there. Oof. Right? And I have to be careful what I go for, because if I go for some stuff, then it's just, living, that I have to do. So my plane is not as responsive as it was before, but I'm still getting 1,000 points, which is pretty good, right? So knowing that I know the game, pretty good, right? So mission accomplished, Stephen. Let's die now. Again, my mouse has no bearing on what it does now, because my mouse and my keyboard conflict. My mouse will keep my guy there because I'm checking my mouse position every frame. Is that what you were expecting? Does that solve your problem?
It works now, yeah. I did the external. All I had to do was, the controls that you have the external config file.
Yeah.
All I had to do.
There you go.
Well, why wouldn't it work in the same file like every other engine in the world?
But of course you can. I kept it solves a problem for me. That's why I made it that way. So the config file, could have been added into the game object, right? My game object can keep track of if I'm moving left or right. But something has to keep track of it. Something has to know.
That way that I did didn't work. But
Right.
adding 2 variables externally worked.
Well, the 2 variables, the left and right variables, yeah, those 2 variables could be added to the plane itself, right?
Yeah,
you can actually keep track.
Which they were originally on my project. But why wouldn't?
We could do it if you want to. I can show you that works as well. But at the end of the day, all they are is they're just static variables to hold. It's a Boolean variable to hold my position. That's all it is, right? But that would take care of that problem. So let me update this. I'm going to update GitHub so we can have that. And if I do, it'll update everything on Heroku automatically, right? If I do another deploy. Maybe I shouldn't do the deploy. I just update GitHub. So let's go into here and into my game itself. And if I go to GitHub, I'm not initialized. That's okay. I can totally do that. You know what? I'll make another version of MailPilot, right? I'll call it MailPilot Demo version 2 for you, right? And that's what we'll do. We'll make so that it won't conflict with what we did before. So we'll say GitHub, and we'll go into Centennial, and we'll add a new repository. So you can always look at that just in case you want to refer to it. And we'll say this. We'll call this COMP397 MailPilot Demo. What did I call it? Yeah, I may have called it MailPilot Demo with, I don't know if I did lowercase or uppercase. I just want to keep the same things, just so that way we're on the same page. Oh, then we'll go right into Phaser after this. Yeah, it's called MailPilot Demo with just camel case. Okay, so we'll say MailPilot Demo. That should be an X, and then we'll say version 2. Right, so version 2 is the one with, actually, let's be more descriptive. Let's say, we'll call it keyboard. Right, so we know it's a keyboard demo, right, as opposed to a mouse demo. All right, so I'll create the repository. There it is, and I just need this piece. Right, and what I'm going to do is where I have my stuff running, I'm going to go in here, and what I want to say is git init. With that, git init. No, not yet. I got to make some changes first before I do that. So I'm going to go back into my. I got to be careful because I've already got some stuff going on. It's gonna fail. So instead of it says fall 2015, we'll call this fall 2015 keyboard version, right? That's the first thing I got to change. And also, I should probably change the name of my actual file. So let us close that piece off, and my folder, and close this piece off here for a second. Do I have anything else in here? No. So close this off. Bear with me because I want to create do it the right way for you guys. Otherwise, it'll just fail, and I don't want that. So here it is. So we'll say keyboard demo. We'll call this keyboard, just to make sure it's the same. And now I'll open that one up. And it's not going to have anything in there because there is no keyboard. Right, now I'm ready. And I'll initialize the up in terminal here. And we'll say git init. and we'll say git add dot, and then git commit. Oh, 99. Why is that? Why is that 99? Why? Where's my git ignore? Node modules, ds store, and I have a bunch of other things. Typings. I probably want to add typings in there because that isn't necessary for my git ignore file. But why 99 plus? What's it adding? Is that many? Gee, I guess so. I got 99 files, guys, for my thing. Oh yeah, my YOG files and everything. I guess so. Yeah. Oh well. All right. So okay. So let's try to get. I've already done that. So let's git add dot stage all those, and then git commit -m. I'll say kind of initial commit again, because that's the new project, right? So do that. Now I'll type this in and add the remote in there. And then I'll say git push -u origin master. And that'll push everything up to this new repository. And let's check it to make sure it's there. Yay. So there's Mail Pilot Demo keyboard. Right? And we probably should change up the README file to say this is the keyboard version of it. Right? So go up here. Go here. Sorry, this is housekeeping for you guys. Repo from web came from a Mail Pilot demo for assignment 3. This version uses keyboard input, and we'll say this is called keyboard. So save. Go here, add this in, updated README file. And then go here, this, push. And that should have all those changes up in a jiffy. So go to here and refresh, so it'll have the keyboard version. Okay, there we go. So that's it for you, Stephen. You're done? Are you good now? Are you happy? Are you golden? All right. Do I impress you? Right? So if I can impress Stephen, then you know what? It's I'm waiting for you to impress.
3 more weeks, sir.
What's that?
3 more weeks.
That's all I have?
Yeah, and then I can go back to Unity, XNA.
Come on! You really hate this so much?
Yes.
I'm glad that you learned something though. Well, you learned TypeScript and you got some other stuff, and do you like TypeScript at all? At least.
I don't like JavaScript, so.
All right. But this is TypeScript we're learning, yeah? So it's not just pure JavaScript. Okay. So we've got that's mission accomplished. Let us. That's a good place to stop. It's 4:22, and we just did this keyboard thing, and then we'll go into phaser. All right. So we'll just we'll trounce this one, and we'll trounce this one and this one, and we'll even close up this one for a second, and all that kind of stuff. Kill this too. Why not? And we'll go in and just stop recording.